Hello. Today General Hospital will reveal exciting news on Friday, August 1st, 2025. First, after months of unsettling silence, Jason began to sense an underlying truth buried beneath the official narrative of Britt's supposed death. Ever since her disappearance, something had never sat right with him. And recent discoveries only deepened his suspicions. While combing through encrypted WSB surveillance archives, he came across a photo retrieved from a covert compound in Eastern Europe. In the background, barely visible but unmistakable, was a small symbol etched onto a wall, 5 blooming poppies arranged in a circle. His heart stopped. That symbol mirrored the insignia on a pendant Britt once wore close to her heart, a family heirloom she never parted with. Jason knew the significance of it went beyond coincidence. When he brought up his suspicions to those who knew Britt, they dismissed his concerns as grief-driven delusions. But he couldn't silence the growing certainty inside him that Britt hadn't died. When Jason showed Anna the image of the 5 poppy insignia, her reaction was instant and visceral. Her eyes widened, and a heavy silence fell between them. She recognized the symbol immediately. It had once been the emblem of a top-secret biotech initiative known only in restricted WSB files as Project Poppy Protocol. A dark operation believed to have been shut down after internal whistleblowers exposed illegal neural manipulation experiments. The program, funded through multiple shell companies, was linked to Dalton, a rogue intelligence contractor who had disappeared years earlier under mysterious circumstances. Anna confessed that she had once tracked Dalton to an off-the-grid facility in Switzerland, posing as a neurological rehab center nestled deep within the Alps. She had never gotten inside. But she remembered seeing guards with the same poppy insignia stitched onto their collars. Until now, she'd considered the case dormant. Jason's discovery breathed new life into a threat she thought buried. He wasn't chasing a ghost, he was uncovering the blueprint of something much more dangerous. United by truth and haunted by what they might find, Jason and Anna began a silent, unauthorized investigation that took them across borders and into the heart of long-buried secrets. They retraced financial records tied to Dalton and discovered a shell company called Floral 5, used to route millions into off-the-record research. Their next lead was a biometric scan request sent from a clinic in the Alps just weeks ago, data that nearly matched Britt's DNA, but registered under the alias Iris Vale. The match wasn't perfect. But it was close enough to reignite Jason's quiet rage and Anna's sense of duty. As they dug deeper, their contacts began to vanish. Former WSB operatives who once worked on the Dalton files were reported dead or missing. Cloud storage accounts were wiped clean. Still, Jason and Anna pressed forward. Uncovering old audio tapes from surveillance drones that captured snippets of Britt's voice, fragmented but undeniably hers, laced with pain and confusion. She was alive. But something had been done to her. Reprogramming, chemical conditioning, or perhaps worse, Britt was no longer just missing, she was being used. The implications were catastrophic. If Britt had become a test subject, or worse, a prototype, for Project Poppy Protocol, then she wasn't the only one. The program's goal had always been to create neurologically engineered operatives with false identities, selective memory implantation, and controlled behavioral responses. Jason realized the stakes were higher than he ever imagined. This wasn't just about rescuing someone he once cared for. It was about preventing a future where free will could be surgically removed and replaced with synthetic obedience. Anna, hardened by years of betrayal and buried truths, saw history repeating itself. They both knew the deeper they went, the more dangerous it became, but turning back was no longer an option. Jason had found more than a clue, he had uncovered a weaponized secret hidden in plain sight. Somewhere out there, Britt was still alive, trapped inside a maze of manipulation. After weeks of quiet observation and whispered theories exchanged between late-night text messages, Emma and Gio began to piece together the disturbing puzzle surrounding Professor Dalton's secretive project. What had started as idle curiosity about the locked doors and encrypted drives in the university's restricted wing had evolved into something far more serious. They had both witnessed strange behavior from Dalton, his growing paranoia, his coded notes scribbled across whiteboards, and his unexplainable absences that never aligned with his public schedule. While Jocelyn had taken a direct approach by formally requesting access through academic channels, Emma and Gio realized that any delay might mean losing their only chance to uncover the truth. They decided to act before Jocelyn got too close, before her well-meaning investigation drew unwanted attention that could compromise them all. Together. And reputation as one of Dalton's most trusted students. She scheduled a fabricated meeting under the pretense of needing a recommendation letter for an overseas fellowship. Something Dalton would never ignore due to his own ego and academic pride. Meanwhile, Gio staged a minor systems error in the lab's secure network. Gio slipped into the lab using a borrowed access code they had stolen from a discarded admin key fob. Every second counted. Having anticipated this hurdle, had earlier used her smartwatch to gather a pulse recording of Dalton's resting heart rate and breathing rhythm during class, a key biometric input required for the older model scanner. It worked. The lock gave a soft mechanical click, and Gio was inside. What he found defied every expectation. Beside them sat a console displaying simulation models of neural pathways being altered, emotional triggers being reassigned, and identity matrices overwritten by software-driven protocols. Gio began downloading the data onto a secure flash drive while simultaneously capturing photo evidence with his phone. Then he saw something that stopped him cold, a digital file labeled Iris-001, which contained psychological reports and scans of a brain matching a profile he recognized, Britt Westbourne. As he skimmed through the documents, he realized the project wasn't theoretical. It had already been deployed. Britt was not dead. She had been reconditioned, reprogrammed, and possibly reintroduced into society under a new identity without memory of her former self. Joe's hands trembled as he made the final data transfer, the magnitude of their discovery pressing down on him like a collapsing ceiling. Emma had successfully delayed Dalton by faking an emotional breakdown, forcing him into a conversation about her alleged struggles with anxiety and academic pressure, something that tapped into his sense of control and vanity. Meanwhile, Dalton's project wasn't just academic, it was a covert neuromanipulation initiative potentially tied to international intelligence networks. People were being remade, memories rewritten, loyalties reassigned, identities erased and replaced like lines of code. And Britt wasn't the only subject listed. Jocelyn's investigation, though well-intentioned, had been skating dangerously close to the edge of something massive and volatile. Now, with the truth in their hands, Emma and Gio knew that they were no longer merely students, they had become custodians of a horrifying secret that could change everything if revealed. Third, Alexis had spent days battling the rising tension in her chest, a quiet storm of dread and disappointment that refused to settle. The moment she learned that Christina had dragged Cody into her twisted attempt to manipulate Ava, something inside her cracked. The sheer audacity to believe that a staged accident and a seduction scheme could yield anything resembling justice. Alexis had spent a lifetime clawing her way back from the brink, from scandal, from disgrace, and now she found herself cleaning up the debris of her daughter's vengeful fantasies. Christina's latest stunt had nearly destroyed Ava's reputation and left Alexis scrambling to prevent the matter from going public. To keep things quiet, she'd been forced to withdraw a substantial amount of money, illegally rerouted through a dormant family account, to compensate Ava privately and hush the whispers before they turned into headlines. The guilt and fury combined into a bitter weight Alexis carried alone. But the money was only part of the damage. The true danger, Alexis realized, was Christina's willingness to weaponize people. Cody, with his checkered past and unpredictable loyalties, had been manipulated into playing a role in Christina's plan. Whether he knew the full extent of her intentions or not was irrelevant now. He was involved, and the situation was spiraling beyond anyone's control. Alexis knew that Christina had always struggled to find her identity in a family where strength was mistaken for domination and pain was often disguised as loyalty. But this obsession with humiliating Ava, with rewriting her own wounded past, had crossed a line. Alexis had tried confronting Christina directly, but her daughter had only grown more defensive. More emboldened. It was then, in the cold silence of her study at midnight, that Alexis realized the only way to stop this disaster from evolving into something irreversible was to go to the source of the chaos. She had to find Cody. Tracking him down wasn't difficult. Cody was never one to hide for long, and Alexis used her network of contacts to pinpoint his location. When she finally approached him, it wasn't with anger but with a calculated urgency. She laid everything out, what she knew, what Christina had done, the money, the cover-up. Cody was taken aback, not because he hadn't suspected Christina's plan. For all his charm and cavalier demeanor, had a conscience buried under the bravado. Alexis appealed to that, and slowly, grudgingly. He agreed to distance himself from Christina's schemes and help de-escalate the situation. But Alexis knew this wasn't over. Stopping Cody was only one step in a much longer journey. Christina's actions weren't simply about Ava, they were symptoms of something deeper, something fractured and unresolved within her. And while Alexis didn't yet know how to fix what had broken between them, she understood now that the truth she was seeking wouldn't be found in confrontation or punishment, but in understanding the pain that had taken root in her daughter's heart. For the first time, Alexis admitted to herself that she might have failed Christina in ways she couldn't yet name. But she also knew she had to start somewhere. And if that meant confronting ghosts from her own past, then so be it. Because cleaning up Christina's messes wouldn't be enough this time, she had to stop them from ever happening again. Fourth, Felicia had seen grief before. But nothing quite like the smoldering fury that had taken root in Lucas since the night Marco was taken. What began as shock and helplessness had evolved into a relentless obsession. A burning desire to retaliate against the man Lucas believed was responsible for destroying his family's peace, Sonny. Lucas had always been rational, grounded. As if Marco were an expendable pawn in a much larger game. That justification had planted the seed of vengeance in Lucas's soul, and now it grew unchecked. Felicia tried to be present in small, consistent ways, offering quiet support, bringing meals, checking in at odd hours, but the emotional wall Lucas had built around himself was nearly impenetrable. She could feel him pulling away from everyone who tried to reach him, isolating himself with nothing but his thoughts and a growing archive of Sonny's movements, associates, and past misdeeds. Felicia discovered a notebook he'd hidden under his bed, filled with timelines and annotations tracing Sonny's war with Sidwell, and her heart sank. This wasn't just grief, this was a calculated path toward retaliation. When she confronted him, Lucas didn't deny his intentions. He was calm, measured, even cold. It terrified Felicia. She knew where this road led, she had walked it once herself, and it nearly broke her. Desperate to stop him before he crossed the point of no return, Felicia laid bare the truth Lucas had refused to see: the war between Sonny and Sidwell wasn't one that could be won, only survived. It was a generational vendetta, rooted in betrayal, blood, and a past riddled with secrets. Marco had been used not because he mattered to Sidwell, but because he was vulnerable, an easy target. Sonny had allowed his rage to blind him to morality, to decency. And he had chosen Marco not as a message to Sidwell, but as a reminder of his own unchecked power. But as much as Felicia hated what Sonny had done, his future, she asked him to be stronger than Sonny, to be the one who didn't let rage turn into destruction. The past could not be undone, but the future could still be spared. For a long moment, Lucas said nothing. He sat in silence, his jaw tense, his eyes flickering with indecision. Felicia didn't press further. She knew that only he could make the choice. Eventually, he placed the notebook on the table between them, the pages filled with the blueprint of a revenge he would never enact. The weight of it all, the pain, the betrayal. The helplessness settled into his bones, but slowly, something in him began to release. He didn't forgive Sonny, nor did he promise to forget. But he agreed to step back. To reclaim his life before it became consumed by Sonny's darkness. Felicia remained by his side, offering not just comfort, but quiet strength. They both knew the scars would remain. But choosing not to follow the same violent path was the first step toward healing. In a town like Port Charles, where vendettas often wrote the rules, Lucas had chosen to break the cycle. And Felicia, watching him reclaim a piece of himself, knew that choice might have saved not only his soul, but her own. Finally, Dante had felt an uneasy pit forming in his stomach ever since he discovered that Rocco had been secretly asking questions about Britt. At first, he thought it was just youthful curiosity, an attempt to understand a piece of family history long buried beneath silence and secrecy. But as the days passed and Rocco grew more withdrawn, more determined in his behavior, Dante began to suspect that his son was chasing something deeper, something dangerous. When he found a folded piece of paper in Rocco's room containing a crudely drawn map and references to places associated with Britt's past, Dante's concern shifted into full-blown alarm. He knew the consequences of digging into Britt's legacy, especially now that whispers about her survival had begun circulating again in secret corners of Port Charles. Fearing that Rocco had gone searching for answers without understanding the risks, Dante's first instinct was to find Danny, Rocco's closest friend and often the only person who knew what he was really planning. Danny had always been trustworthy. The confusion quickly turned to worry as Danny realized that something might be seriously wrong. Dante's chest tightened. Rocco had skipped work without notice. And no one had seen or heard from him in hours. The fact that Rocco had deliberately chosen to disappear while following a trail tied to Britt, who herself was surrounded by unanswered questions, sent a cold chill through Dante's spine. He knew what kind of people had once surrounded Britt, what kind of enemies had pursued her. If any of those remnants were still active, Rocco could be walking blindly into a trap. Wasting no time, Dante made the difficult call to Lulu. Though their relationship had been strained by distance and circumstance, she had every right to know their son was missing. Dante explained everything in as much detail as he could, the map he'd found, the sudden disappearance, and the eerie possibility that Rocco had managed to track down someone who knew about Britt, possibly even Britt herself. Lulu was understandably panicked but quickly moved into action. As Dante coordinated with her and alerted the local precinct to quietly keep an eye out for the boy, he tried to remain calm. But deep down, he knew that if Rocco had gotten close to the truth, especially a truth that someone powerful wanted buried, he might already be in danger. Hours passed with no word. Dante combed through traffic footage, retraced the route Rocco might have taken based on the map, and followed up with anyone his son had recently interacted with. As evening began to fall over Port Charles, his desperation grew. He couldn't shake the image of his son walking fearlessly into a shadowed part of the past, one even Dante had tried to keep sealed. Britt's legacy wasn't just a story, it was a web of loss, danger, and secrets that had already claimed too many lives. If Rocco had indeed found her, or worse, someone pretending to be her, there was no telling what he might uncover or what that person might do. Dante, torn between guilt and fear, vowed silently to find his son no matter the cost. Knowing that time was slipping away and that every hour brought Rocco closer to a world he wasn't ready to face.